Learn Excel from Mr. Excel Podcast, episode 2059. Excel track changes in formula results. Hey, welcome back to the Mr. Excel Netcast. I'm Bill Gell, and today's question sent in from Montreal about track changes. Track changes. All right, so here's what we have. We have 4 input cells and a whole bunch of formula cells that rely on these input cells. And if I would turn on, go back to the Review tab, turn on Highlight Changes, track the changes while editing, click OK. All right, and they warn me that they have to save the workbook and that macros cannot be used in shared workbooks. This is the problem. When you track changes, they share the workbook, and there's a whole bunch of things that can't happen in shared workbooks, like macros and a whole bunch of other things. But let's just take a look at how track changes works in Excel today. Let's take this 2 and change from 2 to 22, and take this 4 and change it from 4 to 44. All right, and you see what they've noted in track changes is that these 2 cells changed. All right, those purple triangles are the actual track changes. All of this red stuff, that does not happen, but I just illustrated that all of these red cells are changing, and track changes says nothing about these changes, right? So it just says these 2 cells were changed, but all of these other cells were also changed. And so then the question from Montreal is there a way to have track changes actually show us everything that changed, not just these input cells that changed? All right, so first thing we have to do is turn off the Excel built-in track changes. And then is there a way that we can build our own track changes system that will allow us to see all of the formula cells that changed? All right, so step 1, and this step is the most important step. Do not skip this. Look at your file. Your file is called something.xlsx. You have to save this. File save as a macro-enabled workbook, or none of this will work. You have to right-click, customize the ribbon, turn on developer. Once you get to developer, go to macro security, change from this setting, the one that says we're not going to let macros run, and we're not even going to tell you that they're there, to this setting. You have to do those 2 steps. I've already done those 2 steps. I live every day with those 2 steps already fixed, but if you're new to macros, this is new to you. And then we need to figure out what kind of formatting you want. All right, so I'm just going to choose some cells here, and I'm going to record a macro that's called how to CF red. I'm not going to assign it to a shortcut key because this is never going to run again. I'm just recording code to figure out how conditional formatting works. And we'll go into home, conditional formatting, highlight cells that are not equal to, so more rules, format cells not equal to, see that it's not in the original drop down, but if you come in here, not equal to 2, and then choose the format. This is the important part. So I'm going to choose a red background. You choose whatever color you want here, right? Even go into more colors, choose some other red, go into custom, choose some other red, right? That's the beauty of the macro recorder. They are going to get us some perfect red for you, or blue, or whatever it is that you want. All right, click OK. And then we're going to stop recording. Right? Again, the whole point of this is just to see what the code is for conditional formats. I'm going to macros, how to conditional format red, and edit. All right, so here's the important parts of this code. I can see that they're adding a conditional format using the XL not equal, and we're hard coding it to not be equal to 2. And then we're changing the interior of the cell to that color. All right, I also need to figure out how to delete all conditional formatting on the sheet. So back to Excel, record another macro, how to delete all conditional formatting, OK. Come here to the Home tab, go to conditional formatting, clear rule from the entire sheet, stop recording, and we'll go look at that code. Great. It's a 1-line macro. And I even like here that the way they do it for the entire sheet is they just refer to cells. So in other words, all the cells on the active sheet. Now, I need to make this macro, the recorded macro, a little bit more generic. And I've written lots of books about how to do VBA in Excel, and I've done videos on how to do VBA in Excel. And here's the simple thing. You need to be able to record a macro like this, but then add about 5 or 6 lines in order to be able to make the macro generic enough. And I'm going to talk about those lines. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to say I want to go through the active workbook, go through all of the worksheets. So for each worksheet, WS is an object variable. I'll go through all the worksheets. And the person from Montreal said, hey, there's one sheet that I don't want to have this happen on. So if the ws.name, if the worksheet.name is not equal to title, then we're going to do the code in the macro. Here's the sheet name, .cells, .format conditions, .delete. So we're going to go through each individual sheet except for the title and delete all the format conditions. Then we're going to go through each cell in the sheet, but not all of the cells, just the cells that have formulas. If it doesn't have a formula, then I don't need to format it because it's not going to change. Cell.formatConditions.add, this is directly from the macro, although the recorded macro said selection. I don't want to have to select it, so I'm just going to say cell, that's each individual cell. We're going to use the XL not equal, and instead of formula : equals 2, which is what the recorded code did right there, I've concatenated whatever's in that cell. So checking to see if it's not equal to the current value. So if the cell currently has 2, we're saying not equal to 2. If the cell currently has 16.5, we're saying not equal to 16.5. And then the rest of this is just straight recorded macro, recorded macro, recorded macro, recorded macro. All of that's from the recorded macro. Finish this if with an end if. Finish this for with a next WS. All right, so I have a macro called apply CF. Go back to Excel. Add a shape. Easy to add a shape here. Insert. I always choose a rounded rectangle. Type reset to current values. We'll apply home, the center, and the center. Make it a little bit larger. I love the glow. I suppose you think it's silly seeing it's not there. The glow, the setting I like isn't there, so I always go to page layout and effects and choose that second one. And then when I go back to the format, I can choose one that actually has a little bit of glow. To me, I think it looks cool. I think it's worth it. Right click, assign macro, and say apply CF. Click OK. All right. And then what this will do is when I click it, it'll go through all of these sheets, find all of the formula cells, and set up a conditional formatting that says if this cell is not equal to 7, change the color. All right. That's it. It's that fast. It happened that fast. Bam, it's done. And now watch, if I change this one to 11, all of those cells just changed. Now if it goes back to the 1, the colors change. So it's whatever the value was when we changed it. If I change this cell, all of those cells change. If I change this cell, all of those cells change. If I change this cell, all of those cells change. All right, now this is the new normal. Now from here, I want to track again. So I reset to current values. And then if I change this one to a 3, those cells change. And oh, by the way, these cells back here and these other sheets also changed in response to this. Track changes in Excel as it exists. Yeah, it's really lame. It doesn't show you the things that changed, and having to show the workbook is a horrible thing. But with this simple little macro, it works. All right, now the question said, all right, so if this is working, how do I now get this to work in my other workbook? So I have some other workbook and I want to copy this over. All right, so this is a great little bonus tip here. I'll create a brand new workbook and we'll put some stuff in here, and I'll have a couple of formulas. And put a cell up there, right? So we change that cell. Those 4 cells are all formula cells. Now, if I want this workbook, book 2, to also have the code from podcast 2059, well, I could retype it all again, but that would be silly. So we come here to the developer tab and go to Visual Basic. And I want to make sure that I can see book 2 and that I can see podcast 2059. I simply take that module and drag it and drop it on book 2 right there. And now that code is also in book 2. Coming back to book 2, just add a shape. Right click, assign macro. Click OK. All right, it works. And then 3, see, we've now applied that setting to this workbook. Great question. Great question sent in from Montreal. And in this case, great question. My initial reaction is, well, yeah, you're right. Track changes is horrible in Excel. And I wonder if I could create something that would actually track the changes. What are the downsides here? And I'm sure I'm going to hear about this in the YouTube comments. If you had 10,000 formula cells, well, now all of these conditional formattings are going to be volatile. The thing's going to slow down. Too many Excel format errors. Yeah, I can see all that. But, you know, for a nice small workbook, 5, 6, 7 sheets, maybe 50 rows per sheet, I would think that this has some chance of working. Okay, episode recap. Track changes in Excel, it's a little bizarre, especially because they share the workbook. Our goal is to track what formula cells in Excel change. You have to save the workbook as XLSM, change your macro security. Record a macro to figure out the code to set up conditional formatting for numbers not equal to 2. That's just to figure out what red you want to use. Choose the formatting you want. Record another macro to learn how to remove conditional formatting from the worksheet. And then to that macro that we recorded, the first one, add a loop for each worksheet, an if statement to prevent it from running on the title sheet, then a loop to check each formula cell. Add conditional formatting to each cell that says if this cell dot value is not equal to the value at the time that it ran, then we're going to highlight the things. Go back to Excel, highlight, assign a shape, add a shape, assign a macro to the shape, click the shape to run the macro. And then I also showed you the bonus tip, dragging a VBA module to a new workbook. Well, hey, I want to thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time for another netcast from Mr. Excel.